Okay, good morning, YouTube. Welcome back to the Sunbird Family Farm. Behind me is our peach tree. Um, I got to prune it up before spring. We have such a mild and short winter. Um, you could do this in colder climates. You'd want to do this late winter. Um, for us, like I said, we're getting into about the coldest part of our year, which is early winter. And I've noticed if I don't do the cuttings sooner, they'll actually start to flower out, which is fine. You can prune it then if you want as well, but I prefer to not. A couple things about the peach tree. What I'm trying to achieve here is more of a vase or a bowl-shaped canopy. So I want long branches coming off the sides and little, if any, branches in the middle. That way the sunlight, the air can get through. Fruit is down lower where you want it to be. So it just makes sense. I'm just looking at the tree. There's things on it. You can prune back about 40% of the tree and it won't phase it. It'll just vigorously grow the next year. One thing to know is the fruit is produced on the wood that is a year old. So if it's not a year old, it's not going to bear any fruit. I don't know if that's true, to be honest with you. I think it has to be at least a year old to bear fruit. The bigger branches won't bear any fruit. I've noticed that. It's usually these spindlier ones that come off. So we're going to go through and we're going to cut off anything that's crisscrossing in there, anything that's growing into the middle, any dead or damaged wood, any real small spindly branches that just aren't going to hold. There's broken branches over there. So I want to bring you in close to show you something else. Okay, so see this branch right here? You guys could just see me moving it, but it's got some disease right there. So I want to at least cut that off. And then as I look farther down, it's growing right on top of another branch here, which I just don't like how close they are. They have no room. So I think that's a good candidate for a complete branch removal there. And I wanted to show you this canopy, what I'm going to try to do. I think I'm going to cut this center leader out here. And then I'll keep my branches growing out like this. I like how it opens up the center. And you don't want the fruit so high that you can't reach it, right? Without a ladder. So all those up there, I'll trim back to a manageable height, you know. So like I said, you want the tree to grow outward versus upward. So that's going to be my goal. I thought I'd just put you guys back and I can either film and talk or maybe I'll just time lapse. I don't know. There. So I got a big set of loppers here. I think I'll start with those. And I'll clear out the big stuff. So, yeah, I'm okay with cutting that. That's okay. It's hard to cut big chunks off a tree like this. You're just like, oh boy, what am I doing? But for the sake of the tree and being able to manage it, this is sometimes just what you got to do. Knocking you guys over. That was a big branch. But you know, sometimes you have to say aesthetics be damned and just cut the tree back. Ideally, this would have been done when the tree was little, and we could have managed it a little bit better, but you take what you're given and you do what you can. So this one here, lop that off. So that's opened it up quite a bit already. I got this inside part opened up. This part is separate, but I still, these are still too tall for me, right? I can't reach fruit that's up there. So what I'm going to do, I have a damaged piece right here as well. I'm just going to cut it off right below that. So then I'll come back with my smaller ones and do these. So this one too, it's a good branch, but, and this is all in 1 year, all this. So that's why I don't worry about over pruning, because it'll come back. So I don't really like that big long one. I'd rather have these two shorter ones. So I got this one now, and I'm coming out flatter. We'll do the same with this one. I got a good branch here, so what I'm going to do is shorten this one up quite a bit. And then I'll take this one off here. And now when I come back and I'll clean these off, I got a nice leader bringing my tree out this way. And again, I'm not worried about how much I'm taking off. This tree will, I'll show you at the end of the year. It'll have no problem with overcoming this. So I'm going to clean this cut up. Try to not leave a cut that's perfectly flat, because the water can pool up on top of it. So now I got a little slope, that's all. That's all that was. So come around to this big boy over here, and I gotta really decide, because we had a branch break off right here. It seems to have healed itself, but both of these branches are going the wrong way. They're almost going straight up. This one's not too bad. Oop. So let me just step back and think for a second. I mean, I definitely could cut the whole thing off. I may do that. Cut it right below where it broke here. Cut these off. And then I'll have to work with the new growth that comes off it. I wonder if I just take it right here. Like I said, this branch could be okay. It's a little close to the other one. Let's start right here. Can't be afraid. Yeah. And that's kind of what I was expecting to have to do with this. We never pruned it hard at all. So it's had a lot of time to get away from us. So let's dress up here. Here's a broken branch. Here's a branch going to the inside we don't want. Let's put these all in piles. All these little tiny ones. don't need and don't want, especially if they're aiming towards the center of the tree. A good rule of thumb is if it's not as thick as a pencil at its base, it won't be able to hold the fruit when it comes time to fruit. So on this branch, I really want to keep everything on the right, because if it's going left, it's gonna get into that other branch over there. I'll let these couple ride because they're out far enough. But we'll get rid of a little one, another little one. We'll get rid of this up here. This one is going up. We don't want the ones going up. Yeah. It's looking a lot better. Come around this side. All the little stuff that's pointing in or upwards. We'll crisscross in another one. All of that's gotta go. I know some of you all are like freaking out right now. Like, what are you doing, Steve? It will be fine. So it's only going to produce fruit on these pieces that I leave. I'm going to cut some of these long ones back. So we'll still get, dozens of pieces of fruit. But we have to do this drastic to get us set up for the coming years. So next year, I'll have just a very little bit of new growth coming up the middle that I'll have to trim. Most of it we'll be able to, most likely, be able to leave it. But as I said before, I mean, these kind of hard prunings need to happen either when you first plant the tree. You really got to cut it back, and I had to cut that big leader that was going straight up. That could have been done at a much earlier age, and it wouldn't have been such a drastic cut to the tree. Let me step back and look with you all and see. Yeah. So now it looks more like a little vase, right? Got all the branches that are crisscrossing off. I've left some branches that'll make some fruit. Left a lot of room for the tree to put out new shoots. Air and light is the best defense against diseases and pests on trees. So it just behooves you to get as much light as you can in through the canopy. It'll help everything else out. And I had several bad branches in there that I took off. That one big leader on the left here that I cut off, right above it was a huge sore from a broken branch. And although it would have been fine to keep it, I think it was healing. Since it did pose a little bit of a problem in its direction, it kind of had two strikes against it almost. So I'm pretty happy. I think that'll do. I got to do the fig tree. That's a little different. The fig tree is even more robust in the sense that you can cut it even harder back, and it grows just as much, just as vigorously. Why don't we step over to this tree? I guess it's getting to be redundant, but this tree you can cut right down to the ground, right down to the ground, and it'll sprout branches next year like crazy. So it's super vigorous. Honey locust tree. So What do we got? Anything going inside? So let's take out show you the thorns that are on these things. And they'll put out more thorns the more, like this pruning will actually probably force out more thorns as well as more branches. It doesn't like to be nibbled on by deer or anything like that. But, so crisscrossing to the inside. Don't like you, mister. I'm sure how big these can get too. So here's my hand. It's damn near as long as a finger. And they're huge, 3 inches, 4 inches, some of them are bigger ones. And they get you from time to time, boy. So we don't want this to really be a shade tree. It's here to put nitrogen into the ground, to help fix nitrogen. So I'll take a little bit off the length of these tall branches as well. We'll just nip them all, actually. That'll help slow down some of this really rapid growth that happens. So these branches here are from 1 year. So you got nearly 6 feet of growth out the top branches in 1 year. They grow pretty crazy. First came across this tree at my grandmother's house, and it got destroyed in a storm, and we cut it down right to the ground, and I put a plant potter there and had some flowers, and the thing grew right through the bottom of the pot and out the top of the plant potter, and I just couldn't believe how it grew like that. And we left it, and it grew into a pretty big multi-trunk tree. So. There. Yeah. It's a really pretty tree, has small leaves, and they do really well in this climate. Most things do. We have a pretty warm summer, long summer, and when it rains frequently enough that we don't have to water, everything really does well. So fig tree. Pause there for a minute. So this is the fig tree. It's 3 years old now, and it didn't do anything its first 2 years. We had it in another part of the yard, and it just didn't do that well. But since we moved it over here, it just took off. Just about everything you see is 1 year's of growth. So what I'll do on this one, I don't need to prune it too much. It's not too tall. I still want to keep that kind of vase-shaped, bowl shape, if you will. So I'll clean out anything that's crisscrossing into the middle. I'll cut out some of these, they're not suckers, but these extra trunks that are coming up from the bottom, we don't need those. And it'll just take me a few moments here. any dead branches. This whole branch, this whole canopy is going to come off because the whole thing is leading into the center. Got a big one crossing into the center. Took them off. This one's going into the center. This one is into the center. So now we got a situation here. This one's crossing pretty far. It's almost into the second canopy. And then we got another trunk forming. So I think I want to keep the trunk forming. And I'll take off these crossers even though they're big branches. This will come right back. So we got another nice trunk coming out right there to leave. We'll get rid of these little branches and these interior branches. That's really good. So now you can see the light can come right down in here. Sunlight can get in there, the air can get right in there. These grow big fig leaves, and the air can get very stale. Look at this weed. Yeah, so the air can get real stale in here, especially if it's humid. So now, right next to it, I'll spin you guys over here. Little tiny beautyberry bush. And I'll put emphasis on the bush because I've been treating it like a tree for the last 2 years, and I've been pruning it like a tree, just under assumptions that I had about it. I've never really Googled the information about the tree. So get your guys standing up straight. But basically, what you do with this one is you cut it right down to the ground, and it'll throw up a bunch of trunks like the fig does. And then each year you do that, you prune it right down to the ground. I'm gonna get the loppers for this. My wife's gonna kill me, but I'll have faith in boy, or do I just trim it the way I've always trimmed it? And I think what I'll do, because I'm a little worried about completely cutting this back, what I might do is just really open it up. Boy, everything I watched and read about these, you cut them right down to the ground. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get my lopper. Got a couple of big weeds growing right here. So that's some of the pruning. Let's take you guys over here by the barn. So we're over here with Daisy. Just found to get in the shade so the camera would work a little better. I got my John Deere sweater on. It was a Christmas gift from my mom. It's amazing how accurate they got the John Deere color. I'll stand next to the tractor and you can barely see me. When I ride it, it looks like a ghost is riding it. But yeah, pruning. Thankfully, we don't have a lot of trees we prune. We've got a few trees over here. A couple I left because they're real little, and I'm just trying to get them to get up to build their trunk up before I really start chopping them down in size. What do we have over there? We have a there are a couple berries, I believe. They might not even be trees. They might be, you know, bigger bushes. I guess I'm not 100% sure on that, but yeah, it's a necessary evil, right? You're like, oh, I'm cutting back all this growth that I just seen grow, you know, this past summer, but you're leaving 60% of the tree there. In my case with the peach tree, I bet you I'm closer to 50, but I guarantee that tree will be totally fine. I don't, it doesn't concern me in the least. But yeah, I mean, it opens it up for sun, it opens it up for air, it opens it up for when it comes time to harvest. You're preventing disease and damage by removing all those sticks that crisscross each other in the middle. That tree that I pruned, the peach tree, had a root ball that was sustaining a much bigger tree. Now the roots will die back a little bit, but our growing season is rapidly approaching. In about 2 months or less, we're gonna see some warmer temperatures. We always do. It seems every February things start to bloom and we get hit with a cold spell, you know, but it's gonna happen. And it's got a much bigger transit line, if you will, for all the nutrients and the fluids and stuff to flow up to the new growth. You know, it's still operating, if you will, with a much bigger intentions than what it has. So it vigorously grows back. And that trait will carry through till summer when it's producing fruit. It still has a much bigger capacity to bring up water and stuff from the ground and nutrients. So the fruit benefits, it's just a absolutely necessary thing. I think I was trying to prune it more like an apple tree. Again, I was assuming without, you know, doing any research. And doing the research, it makes perfect sense to get rid of tall leader trunks and everything. You know, you're not going to be running around your orchard with a ladder. I mean, more power to you if you are, but you can prune the tree to do it for you and keep everything nice and low. There's a gentleman out in Washington State, I can't remember his name, but he was the center of the garden back to Eden gardening method, where you use feet, you know, literally feet worth of wood chips piled up, and it cuts back on weeds, it holds water, it it gives organic matter to the tree. But what he does is, he has a disability that prevents him from really using ladders or anything. He has a hard time walking. So everything's pruned with canopies that come out and almost downward. And he's done that over, decades. And it makes so much sense. Oftentimes we're trying to grow the most fruit we can, and half of it falls on the ground and goes to waste. Apple trees are a prime example of that. um, Anybody who's got an apple tree in their yard knows, man, when that thing lets go, you got apples for days, just scattering. And so we don't need that amount of fruit. Keep the tree small, manageable. It's a really interesting aesthetic. Um, so that's the case of the peach tree. The fig tree, I really have no aesthetic looking, no real goal, because it grows low and it wants to grow in a conical shape anyhow. You just need to keep the center cleared out for it and keep the height down to something you can manage. Again, it'll throw up a new growth 6 feet in one season, and that's fine, but can you even reach those figs to utilize them, or are they just going to fall on the ground and become food for pests or something? So that's some of my thinking. Even with the honey locust, I don't need a big tree throwing off a ton of shade. I need a tree. What that tree is for is it pulls in nitrogen out of the air and it stores it at its root bases and on little nodules all over its roots. And because of that, the area around it benefits from all the extra nitrogen. So I don't ever need it to be big. I need it to grow big and then cut it back so I can capitalize on that big trunk. But I don't need a big canopy. And I got a great idea of how I'm gonna prune it once it gets bigger. A neighbor of ours used to do it. He cut it at like 6 feet and cut everything off every year, just cuts everything off. And he's left with just a trunk. And that thing just bushes out and it gets this big, this big circular shape. And I think that would look really cool right there. And then every year I would just cut it right back. And I got the cat over here next to me. She's doing some hunting. Most things in nature need pruning. They do. That's where the benefit of grazing animals come along. If we allowed the deer in here, most of my trees would be down to little nubs anyhow, because the deer would eat all the growth off them. But it would continue to rejuvenate every year, and eventually it would outpace the deer to the point where it becomes a bigger tree. Same thing with your grass. It doesn't get a lot of vigor when you mow it down to 4 inches, but if you cut it back only to like 6 or 8, the growth is much rapid, more rapid, because you're leaving more blade of grass to do photosynthesis. And again, it has all this stored up energy in a root ball that's intended for a much bigger plant. And when you chop some of that off, it's like, oh, I gotta grow, and it just throws up new growth. And rotational grazing is a great example of that. You see somebody who's moving their animals at the right pace across their pasture. The pasture's ready way before the animal comes back to it, because of the rapid growth of it all. So, see if my cat caught anything or not. But that's all I really had. I thought I'd just bring it along for the pruning of it all. And it's a beautiful day after Christmas, and everyone's back to normalcy, it almost seems. But thanks again for watching, folks, and I hope you have a great day. Daisy's still doing well. Aren't you, girl? She looks awfully pregnant laying there like that, though, don't she? Hey, girl. Sorry I didn't bring snacks. She's sitting right on her butt. That's pretty funny. With her legs sticking straight out in front of her. Pretty good flexibility. I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could do that, Daisy girl. Yeah, this has definitely been a matter of faith, buying her and hoping she's pregnant and everything, but I feel good about it. Like I said, I came around this side. I wanted to see if she was, she's laying completely flat on the ground. I want to see what her sides look like. Oh, there she goes. I mean, don't she look like she's carrying right there? She's even kind of laid on her side more than on her. That pink area by her armpits is well, it looks different to me. Like that spot wasn't as grown out, and now she's growing out kind of on the bottom. She's loving the sun. It's probably almost 50 degrees by now. She's a good pig. I'm glad she's got a good home here. And I think she's going to be a good mama. She seems to be the right kind of temperament where she's not stressed. She's not overly anxious around things or people. You know, it's got to be an incredible shock when you've never been pregnant before and all of a sudden you're giving birth. You know, how do they even know they're pregnant when they're pregnant? Or is it just those moments right before they give birth that they're like, oh crap, something's going on here? You know, I don't know. That's the miracle of life, I guess. Right, Daisy girl?